It's time for another Dice Tower review with Z Garcia.
Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at an expansion to Pandemic: The Cure, which is a dice version of Pandemic in which you are all cooperating, trying to keep diseases at bay and trying to save the world, basically. This game, as I said, is driven by dice. It is based on the original Pandemic, but this one is faster, it's shorter, it's also a little bit luckier, of course, because you are rolling dice, and the expansion is right here, called Experimental Meds. It's going to introduce some new cards, several new characters, as well as 2 different challenges you can choose to play with. Let me give you a look, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you what I thought of the expansion. Here's everything that comes in the expansion. You are going to get some new events here, which more than double the ones that came in the base game. You also get a few blank ones to make up your own. You are going to get some new character cards, 8 of them, which again more than doubles what came in the base game. You get the corresponding dice for those and the corresponding pawns for those. And then the 2 main challenges in the game, which are the Mutation Challenge, which adds a 5th color that you must battle, and then the Hot Zones Challenge, which is going to throw some special events at you. So I'm going to briefly give you a look, first of all, at the new characters, the new events, and then I'll tell you about these 2 challenges. For those players that were hoping for more of what they already were familiar with in the base game, well, right here you are going to get that. These events you can just shuffle into the original deck, and you are good to go. And they're going to give you lots of interesting new abilities and powers, many of them similar to the ones that came in the original Pandemic game, as well as the expansions to that game. And I'm not going to go over all of these, but just wanted to give you a sampling there of what you can find in this new expansion, all right? And then the new roles as well. You are going to have lots of interesting new choices now. The rules recommend you shuffle these up and give each player 2, in fact, so that you are able to pick like that. And you're going to see lots of new abilities, lots of new faces on the dice. For example, the troubleshooter here has this face, which allows them to save that die, and then whenever they want to cash it in, as they are pulling dice from the bag, they can throw 2 back into the infection bag, and therefore put fewer dice out. So really cool stuff like that. You'll have an operations expert now. Some of them you'll see up here in the corner will tell you you can only play with 3 or more players, so be aware of that as well. But yeah, lots of new powers, lots of new abilities. I really like several of these quite a bit. They're very, very interesting and diverse powers. They've been able to do quite a bit with that. One thing I will mention, however, is that these cards, which apparently match a later printing of the base game, do not match my base game, which has cards cut to appear like badges, and these do not have that cut. They are simply square cards, and so that's a little bit unfortunate. It's obvious for me if I'm drawing one of the new cards or one of the older cards. Be aware of that. If you have an original printing of the game, I'm not super thrilled about that. But I understand they went ahead and changed these in one of the later printings of the base game. So there you go. For the Mutation Challenge of the game, you are going to put out this new card, which has the purple disease included there. You now have to find cures to all 5 of those. And you are going to also apply some stickers that come in the game to some of the areas of the world to include purple in there. And the other side will, of course, be the original printing. They are pretty seamless. They blend in well. As long as you're careful applying them, you should have no trouble there. And then, of course, you are going to add in the purple dice to the bag, put them all in there, and you are ready to go. The game plays basically the same way, except you now, of course, have to cure all 5. And when those dice come up and you roll them, if you get a regular face, so I say that 5 there, a 2, you'll simply put them out where they go as per usual. However, there are 2 special faces on these. You have a ×2, which means as you roll that, you are going to draw another die from the bag. It might be purple again, it might not be, and roll that new one as well as the one that says ×2. And so if this happens there, I would do it, in fact, again. This came up ×2 again. So as you can see, this could happen several times. And now these would go to the CDC, and then the other ones would go wherever they actually go. So that's the one face. The other face says -1 on it. And when that one comes up, you simply reach in the bag here. You are going to take one die out and remove it from the game, and then re-roll this one, which again could give you that -1 again and keep depleting the bag. So one of the faces brings out more dice, the other one depletes the bag of those dice, which you have to be careful about. So that's basically how that works. Also, when you are finding a cure to that, the way it's going to work is a little bit different because of the faces on the dice. But let's say I have 4 samples for purple there, and I'm going to roll those. For every -1, I take away 1 from the total, and then if I had a ×2, I would, after doing that, multiply everything ×2. So for example, let's give myself here a fake situation. Let's say I rolled a 4, a 2, a -1, and a ×2. I would first remove 1 from the 6, which gives me a 5, and then multiply that ×2. My total is 10. I did not make it. I still need the 13 you normally need to get the cure. That's how that works. And let's take a look now at the Hot Zones challenge. Every player is going to be given one of these player aids, which is going to let you know what the dice faces means, as well as setup information. So you'd have one of those handy. You are going to place one of these Hot Zone dice in every upcoming section of the track. Depending on where you started, it'll depend how many of these dice you use. So right now, standard difficulty here. The rest of the segments after that would have 1 die. You finish setting up all of these. You can do this with the purple challenge as well, by the way, with the 50 Zs, or not. It's up to you. I'm not doing it here, so I'll flip these away for now so we don't have to worry about that. So there we go, and that should do it. And then you are going to roll one of these per color in the game, meaning per disease, so just the original 4, and then added to the area that has the most of that. So for example, I'll say most black, I'll roll this, and I'll put that die there. Then I'll do most yellow, and I'll put this here. I'll do most red, and I'll put this here. And then most blue, and I'll put this here. If there was a tie, the players get to decide where that die goes. You might have leftover dice, and those can just go away, and you are ready to begin. The objective of the game remains the same. However, these dice are going to affect the actions you can take or hinder you in some specific ways. So the dice have 6 faces on them. 3 of them are good, or could be potentially good, and 3 of them are ways to slow you down or stop you, okay? So, let me tell you what they are. I'll put them on the screen as well for you. Evacuation allows you to spend it and move any hot zone or infection die in the region you are to an adjacent region. So, for example, if on my turn I am the yellow player here, I move here, I then can trigger evacuation. I could take this die, move it over here, and I have evacuated that population. And then after you trigger a die, typically one of these hot zone dice, you are then going to re-roll it and add it back to where it came from, okay? So that's evacuation. Isolation ward, which is what came up on that die there, allows me to spend that in order to avoid a biohazard symbol that has come up on my dice after it's come up, but before it takes effect. And again, if I roll this die, I would be the yellow player, so let me grab one of those dice. If I roll that biohazard symbol there, before it takes effect, I can say, oh, I'm isolating it. I re-roll the isolation, and I roll away from the biohazard symbol. You have the hazardous samples as well, which are right here. And the way that works is when you are attempting to find a cure, you are going to roll, and then you can spend these hazardous samples to add +1 to your total. However, if you do that, you can spend as many as you have where you are. If you do that, you are going to advance the syringe here, the infection syringe, one spot for each one of those hazardous samples you used. And then the 3 bad ones are transportation lockdown, which looks like a tower. And that one means when you are moving into that area, you're going to have to spend 2 matching movement symbols, so 2 planes or 2 ships. You have the influx of patients, which is that one right there. And the influx of patients means that if that region outbreaks, then you are going to draw and place 4 infection dice from the in the treatment center in here. And then lastly, the rate effect, which are these sitting out here on the track. And they could come up on the dice as well. Of course, that one means if you add 1 or more infection dice to that area, you are going to change that die sitting there, the rate effect die, to an evacuation phase, but then you draw and roll 2 more infection dice. So these all affect the things you can do and how you can do them. The ones sitting on the track here quite simply come into play as you cross the threshold, you have an outbreak, you complete the outbreak, and then finally you take this one off, you roll it, and you add it to the active player's area in the world. And so there you have it. Let's break down what comes in the box here. You have the new roles and the new events. Those are wonderful. You can just mix those right in, and you are good to go. And again, if I think that's almost like a shoe-in for extra stuff that needs to be in an expansion, and it's in there. So it's not surprising, but it's very, very welcome. And they did a good job balancing those roles, making them interesting, making them engaging. It makes you want to play with the new characters. And again, that's great. I unfortunately, as I mentioned already, have character cards that do not match the ones in this box, but I'll get over it. I'll sleeve them or I'll figure out a way to deal with that. It's just unfortunate that I can tell if a card is from the original or from the new one. So there is that. The 2 challenges, the Purple Disease Challenge is great, and I think of the 2, it is my favorite because it is easy to implement and has such a small rules overhead that you can quickly get someone up to speed who's only played the base game a couple of times even. You can tell them, okay, there's this now, these 2 faces mean this, boom, and you're playing. And I like that a lot. It makes the game tougher, it gives you a challenge, but it does so without having to hit you up with a bunch of rules. The other expansion, the Hot Zones challenge, on the other hand, is almost the exact opposite of that. There are lots of new little rules, and it is not as easy to implement. That is one for, I think, people who have played the base game a lot. Also, it's depending on the play session, it might be an integral part of what's going on in the game, or sometimes you can largely ignore it or have it not affect you, I guess is what I should say. I should also mention that you are able to, when you are somewhere with one of these dice, you can spend a cross from the CDC to re-roll one and put it right back where you are, which is very necessary, especially when you are locked down by the travel lockdown there. So you can do that as well, and so you can affect where you are without having to trigger where you are, okay? But I've had games of it where we barely touched it. It barely mattered. And sometimes it does matter. And those dice can even outbreak, in fact, which, again, I did not go over in the rules overview there, but more than 3 of those, they can outbreak even. So there is that. And there are a lot of rules there, and it's very interesting. I'm just saying that one's more for the people that have played a lot and really want something more thematic and with more rules. But it's good. So overall, my only complaint of the entire package is that the box that the game comes in, the expansion rather, is as big as the original box, and that's just ridiculous. The components that come in this game could have fit easily in a box half this size. So I don't tend to be a big fan of that, especially for expansions. You know, a base game that's big needs that shelf space to look good on the shelf, to pop out, to make those sales. I get that. An expansion, which is basically selling for the people that have this already anyway and already saw this on the shelf, I'm less forgiving of that. So I think this is very unfortunate. I don't like that the box is so massive. Then you crack it open and you're going to have that initial moment of disappointment of going, oh, that's all that's in here? Okay. So there is that. However, everything that comes in the box is very good. And I think this is a wonderful expansion. If you like the base game and you want a little bit more, there's no discussion here. Go out and get this. You are going to dig what comes in this box, okay? So that's it. I think it's, again, a very well done expansion. Thumbs up from me, that is, for Pandemic the Cure Experimental Meds.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.